Shana Tova. Adorning the halls of the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati are photo galleries of most ordination classes since 1875. And for this morning, there's two photos worth mentioning. The picture of the ordination class in 1972, where Sally Brisand became the first woman rabbi ordained in the United States. The second picture from probably the 1960s ordination class illustrates a painful moment for one freshly minted rabbi. This rabbi decided to wear a kippah, defying his colleagues in years of classical reform precedent. His bravery to return to Jewish tradition wasn't popular among his class, and so a classmate punched him in the face. What's the lesson here? Thus proving that change can literally hurt. We are creatures of habit. We like what's comfortable. It's our only certainty. When change rocks the boat, we resist, even when it's detrimental to our health. For example, Craig McTavish, an 18-year veteran of the NHL, and for us Southerners, that's the National Hockey League. He refused to wear a helmet after a league mandate because of 100-mile-an-hour puck flying frozen pucks at people's heads. He still resisted, so the NHL settled with McTavish, grandfathering him as the only player to go helmetless. A recent article in the Wall Street Journal suggests that the United States is inching closer and closer to the metric system. Just imagine ordering our deli slices at Publix in grams. And for your kol nidre dinners, 3.8 liters equals 1 gallon. It's the high holidays, 10 spiritually challenging days to remind us that to improve our imperfections and knowing that change isn't easy. There's a clear reason why our tradition calls us the stiff-necked and stubborn people frequently. We've been resisting change for over 5,000 years. The Israelites hated freedom because they didn't eat fish in the wilderness and wanted to return to slavery where apparently there was abundance of branzino. But on a serious note, I want to empathize with this Temple Emanu-El family. I recognize that change has been extremely difficult for this congregation. The past few years saw sudden staffing changes, new faces, new voices, new job titles, new organizational charts, new programs, and not to mention a pandemic that changed our high holiday service for a second straight year. For this congregation, stability sounds great. We're hoping, please don't rock the boat. We are finally learning the new melodies at our Shabbat services. It's not my desire to rock the boat. I'm so honored to serve this 140-year-old congregation. I would never jeopardize our traditions, our values, and stability. But even with our celebrated history, we need to acknowledge that change is coming for Temple Emanu-El. And we need to brace ourselves that change is inevitable for the Birmingham Jewish community. We've been fortunate enough to build a strong bow and keel through the ages. However, the large swells of change are coming directly at us. Our strength does not come from mitigation. Rather, it comes from our ability to adapt. And so it's time to grab the helm and steer the ship together as we ride these uncertain waves. All right, enough of the metaphors. let's rip the Band-Aid off. We are retiring Trumat Halev, the prayer book that we have used since 2009. In its place, we will adopt Mishkan Tefillah, the standard prayer book that reflects the Reformed Judaism of today. I know for so many members of this congregation, Trumat Halev is extremely meaningful. It's been our source of strength and comfort. We prayed from this book during moments of simchas and moments of difficulty. We've used it to celebrate our children becoming a bar mitzvah or a confirmand. We prayed it to mourn a loved one at Yizkor. For 12 years, Trumat Halev not only defined our prayer experience, but it reflected the spiritual culture at Temple Emanu-El. We intentionally published 2 versions, one that read from right to left, and for our proud classical Reformed Jews, a version that read like an English book, because we are in America. There is a great deal of time, collaboration, and effort to create it. It's filled with beautiful drawings that complemented the prayers to enhance the worship experience. And I know this prayer book reflects part of the legacy of our emeritus rabbi, Jonathan Miller. But it doesn't tarnish Rabbi Miller's historic 27-year run here. He's known about this for a while and understands that change is part of the ebb and flow of synagogue life. There's a great story reminding this congregation that when Rabbi Miller arrived here in Birmingham, he introduced the Hakafah to the congregation. That's the parading, the circling, and dancing when we take the Torah out of the ark. When leadership saw this novel ritual, there were some who said, those who do that should go up the street. And when Rabbi Grafman witnessed the Hakafah at the temple, whether sitting at the back of the sanctuary or near the exit of Hess Chapel, he wasn't looking pleased. If this gives us any comfort, ritual changes aren't unique just to Temple Emanu-El, and frankly, Reformed Judaism has been all over the map. Some early Reformed rabbis wanted to get rid of circumcision, Brit Milah, because they deemed the act an ancient, irrational ritual. Our liturgy once celebrated Berlin as the New Jerusalem. And today we actually encourage immigration, making Aliyah to the state of Israel. Some congregations held b'nai mitzvah on Sundays. In the 1850s, Rabbi David Einhorn conducted the service in German at Har Sinai Congregation in Baltimore. Our confirmation students here sang this tune to they sang the song, Hark the Voice of the Children, which was sung to the same song as Onward Christian Soldiers. But today, our students chant the 10 Commandments from the Torah. Temple Emanu-El is still standing proud on Highland Avenue, making lasting Jewish memories. Mishkan Tefillah will be a change for us. It's heavy. Holding it will feel like a workout because there's 694 pages, and there's a lot of Hebrew inside of it. Yes, the H word. I know that the use of Hebrew has been a concern because you have politely told me about it the past 2 years. But even as we transition to Mishkan Tefillah, it may feel like there's more chanting and singing in Hebrew. But I promise there will always be a good amount of balance of English readings throughout the service. This prayer book returns the prayer experience back to whom it matters the most. You, the congregation. For the first time in the history of Reformed Judaism, that's roughly 240 years, we have a prayer book that offers the explanations about the liturgy and teaches us the choreography of the service. The heart of this prayer book, its inclusion and choice. It encourages us to explore ancient traditions or reminisce of a republished reading from something that is very dear to this congregation, the Union Prayer Book. This change will take time. It's going to be new, holding this heavy blue book. We're going to go slow, but I'm hopeful it will be a source of comfort and comfort when we need it. It's also vital to acknowledge that the Birmingham Jewish community is in uncharted waters. We've experienced sudden staff resignations and retirements. 4 out of our agencies currently have interim directors. There's numerous search committees trying to fill these positions, including Temple Emanu-El as we try to find our next temple educator. We're not really growing as a Jewish community. We've been stagnated around 6,000 Jews. We're also an aging Jewish community, desperately trying to inspire the next generation to lead. This isn't a black swan event. We knew that this was coming to our community eventually. In the past, some of our lay leaders took bold risks, trying to consolidate institutions and campuses to ensure not just financial stability, but to change old paradigms and mindsets that weren't best for Jewish Birmingham. This was a courageous and novel idea that led to good debate and dialogue. We learned that many people supported this change. Others were hesitant and nervous with collaboration or the proposed roadmap. I empathize again with this congregation. The thought of pending change for our Jewish community is unsettling. We've been operating this way for decades. The great rabbi of blessed memory, Jonathan Sachs, sums up our anxiety perfectly. Change has become part of the texture of life itself. And there are few things harder to bear than constant flux and uncertainty. We're not the only Jewish community with looming anxiety upon the horizon. The pandemic and years of demographic changes are causing congregations to merge, and some congregations are on the verge of closing its doors for good. The Hebrew Union College, the oldest Jewish seminary in the country, founded in 1875, is in absolute crisis mode. We know from the recent data from the Pew study regarding Jewish identity and affiliation isn't promising. The focus has been on numbers, budgets, and bottom lines, when it should be God, Torah, Israel, mission, purpose, and the joy of Judaism. But despite our current challenges, it's always wise to look for the silver lining. We're not the Jewish Birmingham of old, and this is a good thing. The dust has long settled, and the gloves have been off for a long time. It's no longer the German Jews versus the Eastern European Jews. So where's the proof? Hillcrest and Fairmont merged in 1970 to form Pine Tree Country Club, where Bethel Knicks and Emanu-El Knicks have been in golf groups ever since. But through the years, Jewish Birmingham naturally came together regardless of synagogue membership. We stood in solidarity for Soviet Jews. We mourned together the victims at the Tree of Life Synagogue at the historic steps at Temple Bethel. We prayed together for health, hope, and strength when the pandemic came to our city. And when Israel and the Jewish world was under attack in the spring, the Jewish intersection at Overton Road, Montclair, and Highland Avenue proudly rallied together in protests for a love of Am Yisrael and the state of Israel. This is what makes our community special, unique, and unlike other Jewish communities. Rosh Hashanah, in its most simplest translation, means the first of the year. But our ancient rabbis called this day Rosh Hashanah, meaning the beginning of change. It's at this annual moment where change can lead us to happier and more fulfilling lives. And it's at this moment where we can make it a responsibility to put our differences aside, find the common goal of collaboration and unity for the well-being of Birmingham Jewish community. I know this is hard to process, the possibility of retiring old models, interrupting the status quo to create a new, unified Jewish Birmingham. And truthfully, it took me time to get to this point. I was a critic of collaboration and unity because I thought it would undermine Temple Emanu-El. I voiced my opinion often, sometimes too often. If the high holidays compel us to own up to our imperfections, I genuinely apologize for dismissing genuine efforts to improve our Jewish community that we so love, my family. The Hasidic masters taught me, man can see his reflection in water only when he bends down close to it. And the heart of man, too, must lean down to the heart of his friend. Then it will see itself within his heart. I now see the hearts of Jewish Birmingham, and therefore I firmly believe it's the right time for Temple Emanu-El to embrace the spirit of Hashinui, the beginning of change, advocating, creating for partnership and community, because this is the best path to ensure a viable Jewish future in this city, and especially for our children. By now, many have seen the video of Beth-El and Emanu-El presidents Ron Levitt and Robert Berman addressing this new beginning, permeating with friendship, admiration, and collaboration between the two temples on Highland Avenue. We've also successfully launched Kesher, the high school program where all Jewish teens are invited to participate regardless of synagogue membership. For the first time, the synagogues and the incredible leadership of Danny Cohn, our CEO of Federation, created Kesher so that our teens can learn the richness of our tradition and, above all, being together at a neutral site at the day school, starting Thursday evenings next month. Temple Beth-El and Temple Emanu-El are creating a joint Israel Action Committee, not to speak in a horrible cliche, but we know that we are stronger together when advocating for Israel. It's a new year and a new Jewish Birmingham. And let's not forget about the new prayer book, too. It's a lot to take in for a Yontif sermon. I know, I threw a lot of you this morning. Our history reminds us that we tend to resist change. It's in our Jewish DNA to fight off anything that interferes with our routines. And so for many, all of these changes are going to hurt. It's going to feel like getting punched in the face, like that poor rabbi. I promise we'll bruise, but we'll heal together. As much as change is difficult, we get comfort knowing that change can lead us to a better future, and where change can help us celebrate what matters the most: a successful Jewish Birmingham, a love of Israel, the love of Torah, and the joy of Judaism. Shana Tova.